Tonight, let's bring her out here. This is Emily Schosid. Hi, Emily.
Hi. Wow. Okay. Thanks. Hi. Okay, so how many of you think it's a good thing to pick up litter when you see it on the ground? Okay, so like 91% of you. Great. But statistically speaking, those of you who would actually pick up litter is closer to about 10%. And that's because, well, litter's disgusting. But mostly it's because of something known as the knowledge-behavior gap, which basically means that knowing something is a really bad predictor of whether or not you'll do something. You know litter's bad, but you don't pick it up. You know you need 8 hours of sleep to not feel like shit, but you stay up all night binging The Office anyway. You know that guy you met on Tinder is trash, but you're not gonna throw him away either. It's also why you've probably been seeing pictures of polar bears sadly floating along on the icebergs for 20 years, but you still probably contributed to climate change by driving here tonight. Also, polar bears are useless. So, as Fanny said, my background is in environmental studies and marketing, two of the most depressing sciences. My work revolves around trying to find ways to bridge that knowledge-behavior gap, mostly around teaching people how to reduce their environmental impact and create a more just and sustainable future. Basically making AOC queen of the universe. Yeah. I work at DU, and every day my students come to me and say, we just have to educate people more, and then they'll care about the environment and change their behaviors. So they want to bridge the knowledge-behavior gap with more knowledge. And that's really like trying to cure your Sunday morning hangover by chugging bottomless mimosas at brunch. But it's not just my students who want to do this. Most scientists think that we can just shove data and information at people and they'll suddenly start believing in climate change and vaccinating their children and thinking the world is round again. But like polar bears, data is useless. And there's a lot of reasons why, but I'm just going to touch on two of them very briefly. So first of all, science has become something that's really inaccessible to non-scientists. There's this idea that scientific literacy is reserved for the nerdy, overeducated elite, like us, rather than something that politicians should have a basic understanding of before assuming office. Most of the time, if a scientist tries to talk to the general public about science, people will just nod and smile until you shut up and go away, having learned nothing. Kind of like my college students do. Every time I try to say things are fire or lit AF. It doesn't help that we scientists have made basically no effort to try and communicate science in a digestible way, opting instead to publish things in peer-reviewed journals that nobody reads because they are not lit AF. But even if people did understand science, you still need something other than more knowledge to get across the knowledge-behavior gap. So what is that? Well, a lot of research suggests that you need an emotional reaction to the topic. Environmentalists realized this about 20 years ago when they decided that the perfect poster child for climate change would be Arctic murder bears. Because they are what's known as charismatic megafauna. Yeah. Only polar bears are charismatic the way that Joe Biden is charismatic. All right, a lot of Joe Biden fans out there. They're really endearing when they're far away and eating ice cream or baby seals. But the minute they come up close to you, they start smelling you. And then they get up into your business in a way that is very unpleasant. The theory was that people would feel bad about the sad murder bears, and that would make people try to do something to stop climate change. Only nobody cares about polar bears. And you have to care about something a lot if it's going to make you stop driving cars, stop eating meat, and stop ordering pointless shit on Amazon Prime. So, I mean, polar bears, they're thousands of miles away. Nobody has a really personal connection to a polar bear. And like, Klondike and Snow were super cute, but if a cute baby animal existed before the internet, did it ever really exist at all? It's just really hard to draw the line between whether or not that polar bear survives and whether or not I turn my lights off when I leave the house. Partially because that line between that polar bear and my actions is about as straight as the Pride Parade was. And mostly because if that polar bear dies, spoiler, he did, but if he does, what meaningful change does that really have on my life? Now, it's not that I don't think polar bears have an intrinsic value as a fellow species on planet Earth. I totally do. It's just that I think polar bears are about as good at motivating people to change their behaviors as bottomless mimosas are at motivating you to take it easy on the day drinking. So what does work? Well, it's actually stuff like Science Riot. Yeah, I've always had a really hard time with how inaccessible science is for non-scientists. And so I've done a lot of work trying to take science out of those journals that nobody reads and put them into other forms that nobody reads. Things like theater, movies, and poetry. I shit you not, my master's thesis was a scientific poetry reading. It was weird as fuck, and if Fred Armisen had been there, he would have definitely turned it into an episode of Portlandia. But I was explaining really complex science to English majors, and they were having no problem understanding it. Because when science is in a poem or theater or a play, it stops being something that non-scientists can't do and starts being the thing that Denver hipsters live for. Not only that, but these art forms exist specifically to give people deeply personal, emotional reactions to the topic and deeply pretentious Instagram posts. But it makes people care in a real way about the thing that they're talking about. And that's really all we need to create behavior change. You could say it kills both polar bears with one stone. Thanks, everyone. So a friend of mine randomly called me up before the last event and they were like, hey, do you like stand-up in science? And I was like, hell yeah, I do. And he was like, cool, because we're going to see stand-up at the museum. And I went to it, thought it was amazing, and turned out it was really as easy as putting my name on a piece of paper to come and do it myself. Science generally is really inaccessible to non-scientists, and when a scientist often tries to talk to a non-scientist, they kind of glaze over and it becomes meaningless. They can't absorb it, and so I think it's really important for us to find ways to communicate science in a more accessible way and sort of take it out of the laboratory, take it out of the peer-reviewed journals, and put it into something that people enjoy, like comedy. And then people can learn things. My name is Schosid, and I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at the University of Denver.